Joining me now to discuss the news of the day and all the machinations of Canberra is LNP Senator for Queensland James McGrath and columnist at the Courier Mail and Sky News host Peter Gleeson. Great to have you on the show, Gleeson. I've got to start with you. I tell you what, Christina Keneally, you wouldn't want to be, you wouldn't want to get too close to us. I was going to say you wouldn't want to be her mate. Maybe she's good to her mates, but two blokes, there you go. She's taken them both out and she's only been in the parliament a very short time.
Yeah, I know. Incredible stuff, isn't it, Peter? But I was only thinking earlier today, I mean, the whole Labor Party quota system, it really is a farce. I mean, the only quota system in the Labor Party right now is that 50% of their senior leadership team comes from Sky News, their former Sky News hosts, and I'm talking about Richard Marles and, of course, Christina Keneally. Richo, you better watch out, mate. You'll be the next one drafted into the senior leadership team. I think there's a spot there for you. But you know what? I look at the way in which this country and the world looks at our politics and gender equity and fairness. How can the Labor Party propose fairness in its front bench team when it leaves someone of the calibre of Ed Husic out? I mean, that's extraordinary. We saw in the Liberal Party, they banished Melissa Price from the cabinet to the outer cabinet because she underperformed. That was the criteria that Scott Morrison used to take her out of the cabinet team. Whether her name was Melissa Price or Mark Price, she got the flick. And I just look at the Labor Party now and I think to myself, gee, guys, you guys are on about gender equity and fairness when in fact you're leaving great talent, great male talent out of your senior leadership team.
Well, of course, Ed Husic is Muslim and there's not that many Muslims in the parliament. So I guess a white woman trumps a male Muslim. I don't know how it goes. James McGrath, I say this again tonight as a woman. I find it pretty demoralising, I have to say, in 2019 that judgments about where we fit in the leadership teams of political parties and business and whatever comes down to some percentage term, a number written in some document, as opposed to our merit.
Totally. And Labor wonder why they lost the election. Well, they have to look at themselves in the mirror today with the fight they're having over who's in the cabinet and who's in the leadership, and basically it comes down to people's chromosomes. I mean, the people out there on Struggle Street, Mr and Mrs Stringbag, they want politicians to focus on schools and education, hospitals, to make sure roads are being built, not about whether someone wears a dress or doesn't wear a dress. This is just ridiculous. And if Labor want to continue with this game for the next 3 years, well, bring it on, because they'll lose the next election also. But the one person I think we should feel a bit afraid for is Penny Wong, because Christina Keneally is coming for Penny Wong. We all know that. So Penny Wong, Christina Keneally is going to be right behind you.
I want to play a grab. We haven't heard much from Bill Shorten since his loss, which is now almost 2 weeks ago this Saturday night. Let's have a look at Bill Shorten's comments today in the party room.
I understand that there are lessons to be learned from defeat. But obviously we were up against corporate leviathans, a financial behemoth, spending unprecedented hundreds of millions of dollars, advertising, telling lies, spreading fear. They got what they wanted. Powerful vested interests campaigned against us through sections of the media itself, and they got what they wanted.
So he talks about corporate leviathans and financial behemoths. I have to say, if you look at the money expended by the unions and indeed the activity and the money and the activism of groups like Get Up, they completely dwarf anything that Corporate Australia might have done in this campaign. I mean, if Labor want to have a blame game up and down Collins Street and blame business for this result, and they're not listening and they're not looking deep into the policies they took to marginal seats and working families right around the country, they'll stay in opposition, won't they?
Absolutely. He's got to own it. Bill Shorten, you need to own this result. The Australian public spoke. They rejected your negative gearing policy. They rejected your franking credits policy. They rejected the fact that you weren't prepared to mention the A word, Adani. and create jobs for Central Queenslanders and North Queenslanders. I mean, the Labor Party went to this election with the worst set of policies I think I've seen in 35 years in Australian politics. They divided the country. They said, this is not about aspiration. This is about the redistribution of the wealth system, and Australians, particularly, I mean, I think, you know, the moment of the campaign was old mate in Gladstone, the Gladstone port worker, who said, Bill, can we get a little bit of relief? Because I'm working 70 hours a week, I'm away from my family 2 weeks out of 4. Just a little bit of relief, we'll have a look at that. When in fact, he was going after his wallet. He was going to whack him with an extra $10,000 or $12,000 in tax. So Bill Shorten needs to own it, and to go around blaming others for his own shortcomings is not a good look.
Just on the issue of Adani, and you're both from Queensland, we know how much Queensland was instrumental to the Coalition's return to government. Matt Canavan, he's one of these rare MPs, ministers on the front bench who lives in regional Australia. He's got his finger on the pulse about the job opportunities that people voted for 2 weeks ago. He didn't miss today when he turned up at an industry conference and really had a go at some in the mining, petroleum and minerals sector for the way in which they don't want to see carbon price. They don't want to see this continual emissions debate in this country, but they feel powerless to stand up to the Green left and indeed some of the activist shareholders within their companies. He had this to say, and it's a real shot across the bow. He said, we've now had 4 elections in a row where the Australian people have rejected such a policy. This is carbon price, and perhaps it's time we will all listen to the democratic will of the Australian people. James McGrath, this is a real fighting position from a minister that I think now is going to take the fight up to these companies and say, yes, we want, you know, the planet looked after, we want a clean environment, but if you keep persisting on this issue of climate, which is at odds with where the people are at, and we've seen it now in 2013, and we saw it again in 2019, he doesn't seem like he's going to accept them going down the same track yet again. What do you say to that?
Good on Matt for doing that. I was only up in Yeppoon on the weekend and having a cup of coffee at Matt's place. And yeah, he's still recovering from all the work he did during the campaign, helping Michelle and Ken and George and Phil win and hold those seats up there. The trouble we're facing in Australia is big business aren't listening to people. They're listening to the Twitter sphere. They're listening to their corporate affairs managers who all go down and have their little, their soy lattes, and they're all very comfortable with each other in the CBDs, and they forget about what it's out like in the suburbs and in regional Australia. And what Matt's doing is standing up for regional Australia and for jobs in regional Australia. And whether it is the big mining companies or the big banks. Remember when Westpac, aka the Bank of New South Wales, unprompted and came out and said they weren't going to fund Adani? Adani didn't even have a loan application in with them. Big business are playing politics at the moment, but they're playing the politics of the social politics, when what big business should be focusing on is actually economics, and that is jobs for people and building up the suburbs and regional communities across Australia.
James McGrath, were you surprised to see that Bill Shorten's going to stay on Labor's front bench and not leave the parliament?
Oh, look, Bill Shorten's becoming the gift that keeps on giving. I feel a bit sorry for him because, it's a bit traumatic losing an election, but, this guy's, that speech he gave in the party room, Bill Shorten is a sook. He's just blamed everybody else for the election loss apart from himself. Tanya Plibersek this morning was basically blaming the voters because, they're going to miss out because they didn't know how good Labor were. These guys have got to look at themselves in the mirror and realise they aren't representative of Australia. Scott Morrison and his team are. And modern Labor have got to get back to old Labor and represent people and not just represent those loudmouths on Twitter.
Yeah, well, that'll be their challenge. James McGrath and Peter Gleeson, thanks very much for your time. All right, a lot to discuss after the break. Senator Jim Molan joins me. We'll get into this debate around Indigenous recognition, also with Daniel Wild from the IPA.
You're watching Credlin on Sky News Live.